Howdy, y'all, and welcome to another episode of the Stay Creative Podcast, a show dedicated to highlighting talented artists and extracting from conversations with them creative practices we can apply to our own creativity or lives. This show is recorded live every week at the Indie Music Feedback Discord server, so if that's the kind of thing that you'd like to get in on live, you should come over and listen. You can, of course, check out IMF on Reddit or Discord. Today we're talking with AV. He is a friend of mine and a music producer, lyric writer, and community builder. He's a really interesting guy with a lot of insightful things he's going to share with us, including the how he makes his tracks, but also the why he makes his tracks. So please stick around. It's going to be a good show, and I am positive you will get something from it. So AV, thank you for taking time to talk with me today. I know enough about you to know that your job seems to be an all-day, everyday type of thing. So I'm glad you have a little free time right now and you're choosing to share it with us. And I'm sure you know that at the beginning of these talks, I like to jump into background of the artist as opposed to getting straight into the music. So that being said, tell me some more about yourself, starting with maybe where you grew up and describe your life up until now.
Yeah, so I was thinking about this. And I didn't really grow up anywhere. So I basically moved almost every 5 or 6 years of my life. So I was born in India, lived there until I was like 2 years old, 3 years old. Then I moved to Dubai, where I lived until I was 5. Then I moved to California, where I lived until I was 10. Then I moved to Pennsylvania, where I lived until I was 15. And then I moved to New Jersey, where I finished out high school. And then college in Pittsburgh, and then back to New York City, and then I went to Seattle for 10 years, and that's probably the longest I've ever been, is 10 years in Seattle. So maybe I would say I'm from Seattle at this point. Like, that really does feel like home for me, even though I'm in New Jersey.
That's crazy interesting. I know travel is something you do, recreationally, but knowing that that's kind of also been the background of just your life, a world traveler person.
I mean, it's a double-edged sword, right? Because like I never really make any friendships that last like a lifetime, right? Because I'm always kind of shifting. But that said, I'm always making new friends. So it's two-way street.
I'm sure at least some of those friendships have carried on with you. Do you have still friends from any of those chapters in your life, or is it actually you have kept in touch with none of them?
So I'm 40 years old, and what I found is, like, in each phase of your life, you retain like 1, 2, 3, maybe like 10% of your close friends, right? So yeah, I've definitely kept in touch with like 1 or 2 from each era. I'm really I think IMF has this vibe where it's going to be different. Like, I think IMF is just going to be around forever. I hope it is anyway.
I have that same hope and like a weird sad feeling sometimes whenever I think about logging in after years and no one's there, like that sad scene in the movie where you go back to the rebel base and it's empty, Awesome, yeah. Man. Well, talk. I mentioned you've talked to me some about how traveling is one of your hobbies, but I love to know more about artists' hobbies. I feel like the way we spend our free time often becomes the fuel that we use to create things. And in your music, I pick up some of that world traveling, home is where I am, vibe from your stuff. So tell me some more about some of your hobbies.
Yeah. I guess my biggest hobby outside music would be this is weird because I don't think anyone at IMF is really a sports nut, but I love sports, I played basketball, baseball, pretty much my entire childhood. And then a lot of tennis. When I finished up high school, I played a lot of tennis through college and then after college. So I don't know, man. It's one of the things I miss the most about being a workaholic and a musicaholic at the same time. I don't get a lot of time to go out and play tennis anymore. But I still, I'm a huge NBA fan. I'm a huge professional tennis fan. I think that's the one topic of conversation I haven't had at IMF. We literally talk about everything else except sports.
Yeah.
But that's huge. And then, I guess hanging out with my wife and traveling, if that counts as a hobby. We do like, we'll do like, one of the cool things we did when we went to Mexico, for example, is we put on like this 20-hour long course on Mayan history, right? Because we were visiting all the Mayan pyramids and the temples and everything. So I guess that's the other part of my travel hobby is history. I really love reading about what I think are true events anyway. I it's weird. Like if I had to count my reading, I would say more than 90% is nonfiction, and like 10% would be fiction. I'm guessing for you, Chris, it's the opposite. Like you probably read a lot more fiction than nonfiction, or maybe you're balanced.
You'd think so, but I find all my favorite fiction comes out of my own brain, so I spend a lot of time with history too. Honestly, that's awesome. I have some rapid fire questions, kind of following up on that answer. First off, who are your teams? Like across sports, who is it you follow closest?
So when I moved to California when I was 5 years old, the first basketball game I went to was a Warriors basketball game. And so everyone's going to be like, oh, he's like a bandwagon guy, but I'm really not. Like I've liked the Golden State Warriors since I was 5 years old, and watching them win a championship, 3 or 4 years ago was just amazing. Because I just gone through so many years of pain with that team, just losing every single year, like last place. And so really most of my like teams are West Coast teams. So I like the 49ers. I like the Giants. It's weird, but I like the Seahawks too, because I lived in Seattle for so long. So,
are they rivals with those other teams? Okay.
Exactly. And people,
I can hear the pain.
People always kind of make fun of me because they're like, how can you like so many teams? And it's like, well, I've lived in so many different places that I have to, a little part of those places kind of builds into me, and the sports scene is part of that.
Do you follow any sports from like cricket or anything like that from your time growing up over there?
Yeah. So cricket, I love cricket. When I first discovered it when I was like 15 years old, probably. And since then I've just been like, it's hard to watch it in the US because the timings are so, they're odd, because most of the matches would be either in India or in England or in Australia. So the timings are like crazy hours, but
yeah,
I love watching it. I mean, I know most people get really bored by cricket, but it's such a strategic game. There's so many things going on when that ball is thrown. It's probably, if not my favorite sport to watch, it's one of my favorite sports to watch.
That's excellent. I don't want to jump ahead too far, but I think there's a blog post in you teaching us how to enjoy sports better so we can conversate with you better. Favorite period in history? Well, what's your favorite thing to read on?
So it changes. I think right now, I don't know if anyone listens to Dan Carlin's the history podcast that Dan Carlin does. Yeah, so like he got me really into like thinking about the Mongol Empire and how amazing that empire actually was. I know Genghis Khan gets like a bad rap, and yes, he was, he killed a lot of people and did a lot of bad things, but I think that would have been a fascinating sort of like power structure of what the Mongols built, because it's so different from all the other empires that kind of came and went on human civilization.
Any empire that's kind of the seat of power is nomadic is bonkers to observe.
Yeah, and I heard there's like, maybe it's from Dan Carlin's podcast. He said something like 1 in 5 or 1 in 10 of the Han Chinese are direct descendants from Genghis Khan, which just blows my mind. It's like, wow, that's it's part of the world that I would love to visit more as well.
Yeah, just the steppe in general, or like Asia and.
No, the steppe, exactly. Like I've been to like the base of the steppe, like in the Tibet area, but I would love to go back there. And like we actually during business school, we did this nice like 3-mile bike ride at the base of the Tibetan plateau, like right where the steppe starts, and the air was it was the cleanest air I feel like I'd ever felt, ever experienced. And part of that was we had been in Beijing for like a week, and we had just experienced the worst air. But then going out to the countryside, it was brilliant.
So I have a kind of a silly question that I always like to include a silly one, and I feel like it kind of plays into touching on all these hobbies and backgrounds and history and sports and things. But if you could perfectly learn a skill from one person, who would it be and what skill?
Man, I think I'm probably going to give, I'm going to throw out some red meat to Mark here, because I think I would want to learn bass from Jocko. Like, that's just, like, I don't know why, but when it comes to virtuoso, the first thing I think of is Jaco Pastorius. and his music, and the way that he can not only be like a soloist, a composer, but he can also just lay down like a groove on a nice, four string, like a 3-note groove. I love his music so much. I don't know if that's a good segue into music, but that's what I would choose for sure.
No, it absolutely is. Yeah, I love to get into the music conversation with some of your influences, starting, of course, with your earliest influence. So why don't you tell us, when did you start making music, and who were your earliest influences?
I honestly, like, if you want to know the first time I sat down to write a song, it was this February. It was the first time I ever tried to write a song. But before that, I had been like trying to dabble in learning the bass, dabbled in learning the piano, dabbled with vocal lessons, never really understood what I wanted to do with my music until IMF, really. How I started, like in school, I was in chorus and I played the violin. So like I think every Asian kid in the U.S. who grows up in the U.S. generally has to learn either piano or violin, it feels like. So I ended up with the violin, and I hated it. I was always bad at it. And we played music that was like Rodgers and Hammerstein and Beethoven. It was fine, but it wasn't appealing to like a 13, 14-year-old. So I never like I get really kind of jealous when I hear people had these amazing musical backgrounds and they played all these instruments as kids and learned all this stuff. I never had that. I was just an avid listener and sort of a hater of the institutional music that I was learning.
Coming up to now, who's inspiring you most recently?
Oh gosh. Am I going to be really cheesy if I say it's you?
Oh man, I appreciate it, and I will accept the answer. But who then would you say is your second answer?
So it's been producers. Like I think right now I got really obsessed with going into I think Boz and I had this conversation, but there's a producer named John. I think his last name is Brian, Brion. And he produced the latest Mac Miller album and the one before that. And I'm not a huge Mac Miller fan, but I'm a huge fan of this production. And he had done some soundtracks in the past, like I think Punch Drunk Love and Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, which I was a huge fan of those, and just a fan of the ambiance that he creates. And now to hear him doing pop music, it's like I put him on the pedestal where I used to put Nigel Godrich, and Nigel Godrich was the guy who did all the Radiohead albums, like OK Computer and Kid A especially. So I think, yeah. And then if I have to pick one major band influence, it's going to have to be Radiohead. And I'm going to be the one who's embarrassed to admit that I'm actually also a Fish head. I don't know if there are any Fish fans out there, but I've been to a lot of Fish concerts.
Man, I feel like you owe me now 2 articles, because I need to know exactly how to get into Fish, because there's too much. There's too much of it.
It's a good article to write. You're right.
Yeah, get on it, man. You can stop talking to me right now if that's going to get you started. Awesome. So I've got of course another, I don't know, kind of silly question about your musical influences, but you can collaborate with a whole album with any artist. We're going to say, let's exclude IMF folks completely, but who would it be? Would it be one of those producers, or is there somebody else on your mind?
Yeah, it would definitely be like Nigel Godrich or John Bryan. And then, I mean, if I could pick dead instrumentalists, I'm definitely going with Jocko on the bass. I'm weakest on picking drummers, but I would probably go with John Fishman, the drummer from Fish, on the drums, because he's probably the one that I've experienced the most live, and I don't know, man, that guy holds that band down. And then I don't know, man, guitar. Have you ever heard of John McLaughlin? He's like this guitarist from the jazz fusion era. He played with Miles Davis on Bitches Brew. So he also did a bunch of like Indian fusion stuff called Mahavishnu Orchestra.
Nice.
Where he's basically playing guitar and it sounds like a sitar, because he's bending all these notes and he's finding all these like harmonics that you don't normally hear, and it's just brilliant. So I would pick him on guitar. Like I would love to work with that guy. I was going to add one more. Do you know the band Weather Report, which Jocko was in? He was the bass player for.
Because of the conversations on IMF, yeah, I've heard them.
Yeah. So the oh my God, I'm drawing a blank on his name right now. But the keyboardist for that band is brilliant. When I remember it, I'll say it. Anyway, that's all. Just want to add that.
Yeah, you've built a perfect band. I like it. I want to maybe transition into some of your specific tracks and some of the sounds and ideas that you've shared with us. But with art being subjective and personal, it's wonderful in its ability to share what is inside of us with people around us. I don't think anything else quite does it as well as art. And I think, in your own words, it's valuable to hear what it is that you are making from you. So tell us right now, what is it you make?
I was just having this conversation in the general chat. I'm basically a DAW user, right? So what I make is electronic music, and I think Joe Zawinul, thank you, Lampy Shade. Sorry, someone just reminded me of the keyboardist. So yeah, I think I make electronic music, and I focus really on layers. A lot of people here at IMF taught me about the importance of layering in music. So I guess what I would describe it as is sort of layered electronic music, which is why it's so nice to work with you, Chris, because it's completely different, right? Like, I get a very, very, very straight, that's not the right word. I get a very, very well laid out instrumental, which is very different from what I do, because when I'm creating an instrumental, I'll lay down, like, I think I do it maybe more like what Soren Leaf does, but I lay down a melody, or I lay down a bass line, and then I slowly try and harmonize and layer on top of it over and over again. I don't know if there's a word for that. Is that called progressive music? I don't know what kind of music is called.
Yeah, I think that's a progressive element. Like, it's not so much verses and choruses. It is a forward moving progression, right. Constantly growing. Yeah, that's cool. So progressive electronic.
I guess so.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, if you've been to IMF as long as I know you have, everyone's a little bit of a gear nerd. Someday I hope to have like a early morning radio show button that I can push that just says like gear nerd, like a sample for this particular question. But what is it you use? Tell us about your gear, your software, whatever you use.
Oh man, this is my favorite topic. So, well, first let me tell you about my super secret. It's not super secret, but my methodology for getting new gear, which is the famous Amazon 30-day return policy. Like, that has been the way that I've tried so many different types of gear, and I've really settled on Native Instruments as my sort of go-to brand, just because the build quality is really, really nice. And I think people have said that the sounds that come with Native Instruments are kind of like B+. They're not A+, like a Spitfire Labs, or I don't know what would be considered A+, but they're like good enough to be on any track. I think there's no real bad sounds that come with a Native Instruments instrument. I guess that's what I use the most. I mean, I have like another MIDI controller, so I have this one drum machine that's called the Native Instruments Machine. I don't know if it's called Machine or Machine or what the heck, but it's spelled like the French word. Or that is my favorite piece of gear. It's a drum machine. It's a sequencer. You're supposed to be able to use it live. I have not been able to figure out how to use it live yet, but it's basically like a super duper drum machine.
Oh man, so it sounds like you do indeed have the gear to do some live stuff. Are you planning on getting in on some of the open mics someday?
I'm trying to build up the nerve, man. I'm
excellent.
Trying to figure out a way to do that. So the person who's led the way for me has been Mark, because I wasn't even going to try vocals until Mark was like, yeah, you should really try it. I mean, come on. I think maybe even Jerry was the one who was encouraging Mark to do it. So all roads lead back to Jerry, I suppose.
That's true, man. Isn't that the truth? That's going to be the name of this episode. Awesome. Well, so having kind of gone over influences and gear and goals and things like that, I want to move into talking about some of the specific tracks that I listen to prepare, and just some questions. You have so much music, so many tracks of such a variety of styles and things going on, that I feel like this could have been like a 3-part interview. But I'm going to try my best to hopefully promote your music in a way that has other people go do the digging on what it is that you make. But like I was saying, you produce tracks that are instrumental sometimes, and sometimes they have singing, and sometimes it's not even like singing. It's just like repeated almost poetry or single lines that come and go throughout the track. Specifically, one of your newer tracks, There Is Only Love in My Heart. It's almost 8 minutes long, and those are the only words in it. And having had you tell me some about your layer approach, I can definitely hear that, because it feels very much like a progression or a journey or a path or something.
Yeah.
Tell me about how you craft your music. Where do your ideas start, and at what point do you decide if a track gets lyrics or not?
Good questions. I think so. I definitely started that track with just the chord progression. So I take, I don't remember what key or anything that was in, but I basically, I don't know who was describing it. So maybe it was Soren, but I take a very simple instrument like a piano or a pluck, usually a pluck, and I build the first 8 bars. And I think once I can get like the changes that I want in those 8 bars, a lot of the rest of the song writes itself. So I spend maybe a good couple of hours trying to get those first 8 to 16 bars really the way I want to get them, and using that very simple instrumentation. And that's definitely how I wrote "There's Only Love in My Heart." I just started layering on top of that. So I start with the middle of the song too, and then build outwards. I think this is pretty common, but I get the thickest part of the layering done first, and then I do the build up and the breakdown after that.
Yeah. So that first 8 bars that you build is all the layers.
Pretty much.
And then you move them into place.
Yeah.
Huh. That's fantastic. That's really interesting. So you almost get to create this painting, this beautiful painting, and then decide where the curtains are so that people have to see it in the progression that you want. Yeah. That's awesome. That's a really cool approach. I think
that. There might be a song in that,
There might be, yeah. There's a song in everything, if I've learned anything from making songs up. So what about so at the point of putting lyrics on something, does that come up after you have completed the 8-minute version of these layers coming and going? Or is that something that you pretty much add at the point of that original 8-bar creation?
No, so yeah, the lyrics, that one came way at the end. I was like, I've got this amazing thing going on at the end where I've taken away a lot of the layers, and it's just like this simple kind of like a simple palette almost of like a simple background where I can just throw some nice melody, some nice vocal melody on top of it. So I did that right at the end. But I would say that there are definitely songs that I've written the poetry first, like definitely the stuff that you and I do together. It's I write the music first, but even some of my own stuff, I've written the music. I've tried to do that approach where I write the lyrics first and then decide on the music, but I find that process much harder.
I think it's interesting when you try something and you like it less, because it helps you understand what it is you like more about the thing that you did do, that you did enjoy. So that's cool, man. I also want to talk about what you have called speechscapes. Specifically your piece, Expressions of Care. So before we even talk about it, can you tell me what is a speechscape?
Yeah, I love making those. It's like that type of music is all about the journey, right? So I think I do the layering thing that I always do, and then I have to make a decision. Am I going to add words, or am I going to add a speech to it? And it sort of happens at the same time that I would make the decision on vocals. And then I usually go to the community. Like I think I've done a lot of community sort of collaborative work on the speechscapes, where people have given me ideas on who to add. Like it may have been you, or it may have been Starcry that gave me the idea for Mr. Rogers. But yeah, that's basically how I do it. And then the reason I do it is I think I'm sort of looking at it from the point of view that I want music to educate you a little bit. And that's the wrong word. So the word is inform, I guess. Inform you a little bit more than it does. Like today's music, a lot of it sounds good, but the message isn't always there. Like the message is a little bit superficial. And I think the Speechscape is trying to combat that. It's the exact opposite, where I'm trying to find something that you should really, really listen to. Pay attention to the speech and not the music. The music should almost be out of the way, and should sort of enhance the speech. I don't know if I do a great job at that, but that's essentially the point. The point is the music is just supposed to be there to sort of build up the moments in the speech that you want people to listen to.
Yeah, that makes sense. So that kind of plays into my next question. It sounds like you find the value in the speech before the music comes in at all, and the music kind of enhances moments throughout that speech that on its own, as just words on a page, are probably moving.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
By just your being you. There's no person in the whole world like you, and I like you just the way you are. And I feel that if we in public television can own...
So how do you go about choosing a speech? What is it you're looking for that you want people to take away? What is it you're trying to inform people of when you pick a speech? Or is it kind of unique for each one?
I think it is unique for each one. For Mr. Rogers, for Fred, I'm on a first name basis with him, as you know.
I noticed. That's good. That.
I think it's a lot of that one was like what was going on at the time, with just politics in general. I think like society in general. I wanted to have a pure message, like a message that was completely unadulterated by, I don't know. I just found that the message of that speech to be selfless, like the definition of selfless. Like he was doing that for all the future generations, for all the kids who he knows, he knew that they were having, that our society is kind of, it's broken at the child level. Like not all of us have the perfect childhoods, and not all of us have the perfect parents, and et cetera, et cetera. So I think he was doing his little part to fix that. And he inspired me with his words and the way that he does it so well and so selflessly, I guess. Those are the words I would say.
Absolutely. It is a refreshing combination of being articulate and being heartfelt, Yeah. I think that really comes out really well in your music. Like it becomes very, it feels very emotional, despite it's not a melody that's emotional in his voice or a cadence or anything like that, but it is a very moving piece, and I enjoy it.
Thank you, man. Appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, I think that you've alluded to it a few times, but I think the time has come. It would be a wasted opportunity if we didn't talk at least a little bit about Bushido Flamingo.
Yes.
Do you want to explain what Bushido Flamingo is, or should I?
Yeah, I'm happy to explain it, man.
Okay.
I mean, it's basically your creation, because you came up with the name. Because I think I was getting inspired by like everyone changing their name. I'm like, oh, maybe I should change my name. But and you suggested Bushido Flamingo, which I loved it. I think everyone loved it, and I adopted that for our collaborative title.
Bushido Flamingo. It is a collaboration between you and I. Do the lyrics and vocals, and you do some production and arrangement with the tracks, but a lot of the tracks come from me. Basically, It is me sending you everything I make in GarageBand, and every third or so track you say this one's doing it. So you write some words for it, and we put it out under a genre that I think we coined, Hope Hop.
Hope Hop, yeah.
Hope Hop, yeah. It's honestly it's a little bit progressive electronic, and a little bit speechscape, and a little bit dance music, all at the same time, and I love it. And one of the tracks we made just a few tracks ago was The Purpose of Courage. And I remember as soon as I sent it to you, I think it was before you heard it, just the name of it immediately put ideas for words in your mouth.
Drinking her afternoon coffee, feeling lousy, feeling groggy. Puts her hair in a bun. Her mind is on the run. The battle is not yet won. Courage, whispered the doctor.
So tell me some about that song specifically, but also where do you get inspiration for your lyrics, for your own words in your tracks or in Bushido Flamingo tracks?
Yeah. That track, I mean, first of all, we got Boz to do the backing vocals, which I love.
Yeah.
So that track, it came from, I don't know if I'm gonna obviously I'm a pretty liberal guy and this is gonna show my cards, but I'm a big fan of Rachel Maddow. She does a news show on MSNBC, and one of the things that she's been doing recently is featuring video. It's like, I don't know what you want to call them, like TikToks or whatever, just short video clips of nurses on the front lines of COVID and sort of what they're going through on a daily basis, and just facing thousands of deaths in a month is crazy, and that's really what's happening, and that's what the song is about. It's about courage being the ability to just go to work every day at this point for a lot of those people. Go to work every day, help the people that they can help, and there's a lot of people that they can't help. So I can imagine what that must feel like, coming home from a day where you just spent 12 hours at the hospital trying to do your best, and you've still lost a good 10% of your patients. It's I think that is what courage is. It's the courage to go face that every single day. And I didn't do a good job of this, but I wanted to try and contrast it with the type of courage that's more common in society, like bravery and heroism. I think those kinds of words. I wanted to sort of make the doctor brave and the hero, and the nurse the brave person and the hero. But I don't know if I did a good job of that. I think I just kind of made them sympathetic characters.
Man, I don't know. I every time I listen to it, I feel the stirring, the heroicness of like reading a superhero character who's taking a beating but still coming back for more. You know what I mean? Like, I think you did a really good job, and especially with the kind of last verse, the second part of the song. Like you then kind of zoom out from these specific characters living these specific stories, and it's almost like an invitation to anyone listening to be the courage that the world needs.
Yeah.
I love it, man. I think you did great. And I think anyone who's heard the song probably agrees, and anyone who listens to it now that we've talked about it will probably find exactly what we're talking about.
Man, it feels good to hear that. I appreciate it.
And I don't know, man. I think looking for a good message in a time when everyone's pretty much ready to say, well, this is hopeless. Let's all just lock ourselves in our houses. Let's all just survive. I think that is another wonderful representation of courage in our day and age.
Yeah, I agree. Do you have any doctors or nurses in your family?
My grandmother was a nurse of some sort.
There you go. She's my hero.
Yeah. She's my hero too. And awesome, man. I really appreciate you talking with me more about just all the music you make, but specifically some of the purposes and points and message-driven motivations you have behind your speechscapes, your tracks, and this collaboration that we're working on together. But yeah, in addition to music, you also started the IMF blog on Medium, I think is on Medium. And that has been a wonderful way. Like, everyone who has gotten some sort of inspiration to write something over there has really written something that has added more depth and color to this community than we were getting in just, big mass group messages and even the direct messages that some people have broken off on the side. So what is it that inspired you to get that going in the first point?
Oh, yeah. So this is what I call bias for action. We had just had so many conversations in the general chat about, oh man, we should have a blog about this. I think Mark has his own blog going, and I just felt like there were a lot of talented writers in the community because, there's not that much difference between writing in prose and writing lyrics. It's similar. So I just started it up. I mean, I think one night I started it up. I reached out to Pax. I'm like, hey, I'm starting this blog. And then I just started going down the leaderboard and writing quick reviews on everyone who was on the leaderboard. I tried to take one of their songs and sort of kicked off the blog that way. And then that helped me recruit a bunch of new writers. So we have Boz writing, we have Starcry writing. Just about every week I'll get one or two new people who are interested in writing something about the blog, something on the blog. And I'm encouraging, everything. Like, I think Slacker Man has these great philosophical posts about like, what is music? And You know, like what should we, you know, how can we make music better, and then how can we make the music industry better is one of Slacker's themes. And then like the Rumster, I think is going to be working. I gave him a deadline of this weekend, so I don't think he's listening, but he's got a deadline this weekend to write about analyzing the Daft Punk song that he did, the big band Daft Punk song. So that's going to be a cool post.
Yeah, for sure. I like the idea of you know, you got like businessman suspenders and a coffee cup, and you're saying, have that on my desk in the morning, trombone boy, you know.
Exactly.
Real mad about it. Awesome. Yeah, I think you kind of touched on some of the blog posts that have really spoken to me. Like those, you know, in some ways it's just a collection of paragraphs, but those paragraphs would not have been written, or at least written in a way that was so accessible to me and our community had that blog page not been started up. So I think that you should call it a bias for action. I think that is something that I really respect about you, and I think that is something that makes a community better and makes just an artistic experience better. Just having people who are, well, it's not getting done, I'll just do it, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's excellent, man.
You want to hear about my next bias for action project?
Absolutely.
So it's moving slower than I want, and I'm trying to sort of piggyback on what Bulbs is doing with the website, but I'm trying to build a top songs chart for IMF. So using the data that we have on Reddit, we should be able to come up with like the top 25 songs of the week, and then we should be able to come up with like how long they stay on the charts. So like, for instance, I would imagine Somewhat Incognito would stay on the charts for a number of weeks with his releases.
Yeah.
And then I also was hoping to do like genre-based charts at some point too, because we have the flair on the Reddit, so we can do like top electronic things and top rock charts and whatever.
Yeah, that's awesome. And would that all be automated, or are you waiting?
Yeah, I'm hoping that I'm writing the code to automate all of that, so it should just kind of run itself, and then we should just have that content there to do with what we want.
That's awesome, and that would be a really fantastic entry point for folks to get into it. I know Reddit is intimidating when you first get to it. Discord is more so, but having a site that says here are the songs and links you need.
Yep,
just start there. That'll get you going. That's awesome, man. That's a good action to take. But having covered the music you make and things, and just the community-minded actions you're taking, why do you do these things? What is it you're hoping both your music and your other contributions will achieve in the community, in your life, in the people who may stumble across it?
I love that question. I think I don't know if you've ever worked at like the tech work that you do now. Is it at a startup or is it like for a large organization?
It's a rather big company.
Yeah. So I think I got really lucky that my first job, like my first real job where I was getting paid, and I wasn't mowing lawns, was working for a startup. And I think that is really what drives me to be sort of a community builder, because I've noticed that when you get involved early in communities and when you sort of get in at the ground floor and you just push it forward without having any clear goals or objectives, sort of magic happens, right? Like like Bushido Flamingo is a great example of magic just happening. Like I think In For a Kill was talking about how I was anti-collaborative, and that's totally true. Like I came in to IMF thinking I'm not going to collaborate with anyone. I just want to make my own music better. I'm not good enough to collaborate with anyone. But so I guess going back to the community thing, if you push small communities forward, if you get engaged with small communities, little sort of tight pockets of communities, there are magical things that will happen out of that, and you will not be able to figure out what those things are. I think you just have to like go for it blindly and sort of trust the community that something good's going to come out of it.
Kind of with that in mind, but also just in a broader sense, what are some tips or disciplines that you would share with folks listening, or with me specifically? I really like picking up tips and practical steps from people in these conversations.
The tips that I have are stay consistent. I think that there's this one book called 74 Strategies for Electronic Producers. You should definitely read that if you haven't. But it gives you these one-page essays on what you can be doing on a daily basis to improve your music. I think that they're really life lessons. Like if you can consider creating a song and creating a business or creating a piece of software they're all sort of, they follow a very similar process. You kind of have to you start with something really small. Community building is the same way. You start with something really small, and you have to iterate on it, and you have to keep making it better and better. So I'll use this as my my time to give a big shout out to Pax and Vulps, because that's what they do really well. They're able to like take the small kernel of an idea. Like someone will be like, hey, let's do a book club. And now we have a book club. It's a thing. People will show up on Sundays and we'll actually do it. It's huge. I mean, it's good.
Yeah.
I think that incremental, I call it incremental innovation. So the tip is to iterate, to like think in small increments, you know, like think in how, I was talking to, who was it? I think it was David W.R. Campbell. I was like, dude, we can collaborate now. Now I'm getting all like excited about collaborations. And I was like, all you have to do is write 10 guitar solos over 10 days, and then we'll have an album.
Yeah, that's true. That's awesome. Yeah. So you would say, incremental. Aim for the small projects. Do what you can, and then work on it. Yeah,
get something done. You know, don't try and like create a huge rock opera from day one. Just try and create a solo, create a song, create a track.
Yeah. A rock opera is 10 songs, and 10 songs are 5 riffs each. You know what I mean? So like it all breaks down.
Yeah.
It's like a pyramid scheme of artisticness.
But I think the key with that is setting aside the specific time of day, right? Like now when I wake up, I think everyone knows this, I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm on chat. And what I do with that time now is I work on a verse or I work on a melody. And I'll go back to bed or whatever. I'll go back to my regular life. But I think if you have like that, like if you're like, okay, in the middle of the night when I'm awake, or first thing when I wake up in the morning, I'm going to sit down and write a verse, and you just do it. It's gonna help you improve. Yeah.
So intentionality behind scheduling that time for it. I guess.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's cool. I appreciate that. And I remember at some point just before we started collaborating, you talked about how you try to write 10 minutes of lyrics every day.
Yep.
And I think just having like you don't have a boss making you do that, but you are your boss. You are the one with setting that expectation for yourself. And
and the other thing that I've learned, and my wife taught me this, is set those intentions. But if you don't make it, if you don't write your 10 minutes, don't beat yourself up. Just go on to the next day.
Awesome, man. Well, I think that brings us to the end of our questions. Obviously, everyone knows where to find you. You are awake in the middle of the night, apparently. So they'll get you questions if they have more. And I really, really enjoyed this talk, man. I think I'll go ahead and let you go.
This was awesome. I really appreciate it, Chris. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Talk to you soon.
All right, take care.
Peace.
Time is
I love the approach AV seems to have, where he will start with a positive message that he either has written down, found in someone else's words, or just has kind of rattling around his head, and he will build a song around it. He doesn't have to wait for inspiration, because there's beauty and there's truth and there's goodness all around. All we have to do is kind of be looking out for it. I hope you take some time to check out his link in the show notes. Of course, you can also check out the Stay Creative link tree there and find things like the IMF Discord server and a link to all of the wonderful folks who have sponsored the show. Speaking of the show and sponsors, this is the last episode of Season 1. I'll be taking a break for about a month, where I'll plan on scheduling more people for the second season, coming up with some better format ideas and promotional ideas and things like that. So hopefully the show is heading for bigger and greater things, but it does, for now, look like a month-long break. So be ready. I plan on pushing out some sort of bonus content in the weeks that are in between, and there will be a surprise interview posted on the 11th of July, so be ready for that as well. So this isn't goodbye, but it is see you later, and until then, stay courageous, stay curious, and stay creative.